Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video we're going to be talking about Ultimate Summit 6, but if you've been watching this channel you'll know that we already talked about this yesterday, so what is the new news? Well, unfortunately Light has had to DQ due to him having COVID. Really unfortunate. Again, go give him some support. I'm sure he's feeling pretty down right now. So there is a gap now. There's only 15 players in Summit, and the way that Summit have decided to fill this final slot is just so hype, because what we have is Skyjay and Luis. Both of them barely missed Summit. You had Skyjay getting second at Collision, and you had Luis getting 7th at Main Stage. Top 5 at Main Stage was able to get into that spot. So now you have both of these players not getting into Summit, barely missing the mark, and they will be doing a best of 5 tomorrow after Squad Strike. It's going to be on the mainstream for BTS. It's going to be super hype. Whoever wins that is going to get into the final Summit bracket. It's going to be amazing, and in today's video, we're going to be going over which player is more likely, how they've been doing in the past, and if they were to get into Summit, how would they do in the bracket. So first off, let's talk about Skyjay. He has a 17th at Super Smash Con, which is incredible, getting a win on Salt 1, Tavares, Mistake, Andrew T. Those are all incredible players, only losing to Riddles and Aaron. 25th at Ultimate 1 is pretty good. 2nd at Boss Battle, going on an absolutely ridiculous lose run. And these tournaments are a little bit old, but still I do want to highlight them because he doesn't have a ton of results. Then you have Lost Tech City, 9th place there with the win on Kronos and Base Mage. 13th at Bakehouse, wins on Colorado, Worry, Kobe, bunch of really good wins. Genesis didn't do as well, but is Genesis. Some people are going to underperform. Then you, of course, have this Collision run where he had the best run of his life, one of the best runs in Smash Ultimate, to be honest, where he got a win on Mystery, DeBuzz, Meister, twice on Spargo, and a win on Lima, only losing to Riddles. Now, this is by far his most impressive run, and by far the most impressive run that Incineroar's ever had, and he just had it, which does give him a little bit of an edge going into this. So for Luis, he doesn't quite have that peak that Skyjay had at Collision, but he does still have a lot of very impressive results. His best one recently probably being Main Stage, where he got wins on Justice, Colorado, Vendetta, Osimo, Shootone, and Ouch. Very impressive repertoire, as well as a top 8 at Lost Tech, top 8 at Riptide, top 8 at Rising Guard, 25th at Double Down and Port Priority, 65th at Genesis, but Skyjay did bad there too, so he won't hold it against him. Then a 17th at Level Up Expo, not super great, as well as a 25th at Daddy's Down. This is a regional level, but still 25th and not an amazing performance. So Luis, again, very consistent player throughout. He has a couple bad tournaments here and there. For the most part, he's not really getting lower than 25th, even at the biggest tournaments, and a lot of the time you are seeing him in these top 8s. So who's actually favored here in the matchup? And I will say, in terms of experience, it is heavy in Skyjay's favor because he has played against Chag many times in tournament, and I imagine many times out of tournament as well. He is 8-11 versus him lifetime, which is still pretty good. He won the last 2 times they played, as well as Palutena just being a much more common character. And I think a big thing about it as well is that Palutena is a character that the playstyle of it, you can't really mix it up too much. And what I mean by that is just the character is fairly linear, and most Palutenas at most percents are going to be doing the same thing. At low percent, most of them are going to be fishing for an air. Most of them are going to be fishing for like back airs, dash attacks. At mid percent, most of them are going to be wanting a back throw, dash attack, same thing. At the higher percents as well for the kill, there's not as much mix-up that you can have with Palutena because that's just kind of one of her weaknesses. She's a bit linear, and Skyjay has so much experience versus Chag that he's probably going to know a lot of what Luis wants to do, at least for his basic game plan. You still do have Luis, though, who is absolutely crazy, probably one of the most crazy Palutena players that does the most, not random stuff, but does the most unexpected stuff, which is also why he's one of, if not the best Palutena player right now. You have a win over Mystery Soul, which is nice. At least he knows the matchup. He has played it before. We'll say Skyjay's probably a little bit higher than Mystery Soul, especially right now, the way he's been playing, but Mystery Soul is an incredible Incineroar. He got 9th place at this tournament that they played at Port Priority 6, so Luis at least has had some experience in the matchup. Now, character to character matchup, Luis is definitely favored here because he plays both Fox and Palutena. We're going at this the length through Palutena because that's probably who he's going to play, but if it isn't going well, he can bust out the Fox. It is a very reliable secondary, and according to Skyjay's matchup chart, those are both in the -1 tier, not great matches for Incineroar, and from Palutena's matchup chart, this was made by Luis, he has Incineroar in the winning tier as well. So on paper, Skyjay is at a disadvantage here. Even though he does have a lot of experience versus Chag, the matchup is still in Luis's favor. Now, Incineroar versus Palutena is not an unfamiliar topic on this channel. We talked about it a couple days ago. I'll leave a link to that video in the description. A little bit of a shameless plug, but we gotta do it. But you have Incineroar versus Palutena, and the thing about Incineroar in this type of format, where there's just one set that you have to win, this character excels here, because the problem with Incineroar is the consistency, because you can make these super explosive runs like we saw Skyjay do at Collision, but it's really hard to be consistent like we see by this 97th, whereas Palutena, it's harder to make those explosive runs, but you are much more consistent like we see with Luis, who has a bunch of 7th places, but he doesn't quite have that peak of 2nd that Skyjay has. So I will say, if you're just playing one set, I do think that kind of format favors Incineroar, even though the matchup is still in Palutena's favor. You just have to win 3 games. You have to get basically 3 correct reads to get yourself in the lead and then play from there. Within Skyjay as well, with the way he uses Revenge inside B, that's definitely plausible. So I think this format does benefit Skyjay. Now, using the seeding from yesterday's video, we're going to take out Light and put in one of our new players, starting off with Skyjay. He would be 9th seed for me, right below Mudes and right above Apollo Kage. And with this 9th seed, he gets put into MKLeo, Gluttony, and Hungrybox. Now, this is possibly the worst pull he could have got. He's 0-2 versus Gluttony lifetime. The sets weren't necessarily washes, but still not something in his favor. Then you have MKLeo, which you never want to see. But then you have Hungrybox. And for most people in this bracket, you want to get Hungrybox right because he's playing Puff, and he's not quite that top 50 caliber that the rest of these players are right now. But Skyjay plays Incineroar, and that is a terrible matchup for Incineroar. He does really bad. Now, it is still Puff, so you can still win off 1 to 2 hits, but for the most part, Puff can camp it really well. You can edge guard super easily. It's not a great match for Incineroar, so this is actually a very bad draw for Skyjay. Now, if he does get this 10th seed over Apollo Kage, or Apollo Kage is higher than him, that can completely change things. For what I have the seeding as, this is a pretty rough draw. Now, if Luis were to get the win, I'd have him at the 12th seed, right below Big D and right above Aaron, and his pool would be Tweak, Proto, and Aaron. Now, I think he's 1-2 versus Aaron lifetime, and the last time they played was at Smash World Tour, but Luis was able to take that, so that's points for him. He did lose to Proto at EVO, but also that was at EVO, so I don't really know how that's going to go, and he's never played Tweak. But for the matchup charts alone, it's not great, because you have Diddy in even, which is nice. It's not in your favor, but at least you're not losing it. You have Min in the winning, but it requires matchup knowledge, but he has beat Justice in the past, so he probably has that knowledge. But then you have Lucina and Sephiroth in the slight loss here. It's not a hard loss, but we'll probably see that from Proto and Tweak. And then in the big losers tier, you have Aegis, which we might see from Aaron. I haven't seen his Aegis in a really long time, but isn't a character that needs super high maintenance for, so maybe he picks it up for this matchup, or he just uses it versus Luis. Not really sure. It probably is just going to be Diddy Kong. Maybe again, though, we could see Fox. I think that is something that we have to consider here. I think Luis's Fox could cause some damage, and we have seen Tweak struggle versus Light Fox. Now, that is a very different type of Fox, I will say, but Luis is one of the best Foxes in the world. Maybe he can give him that same challenge. Same thing to Aaron, same thing to Proto. So it's going to be interesting which character we actually see. Again, I do probably think it's going to be the Palu, but regardless of what character he uses, when you're in a pool with Tweak and Proto, it's a little bit rough. So who's actually going to win this thing? You have Luis having the favor of the matchup and a free tempo change in that secondary change, which is also a winning matchup. And for Skyjay, you have the momentum from Collision that might carry over, as well as just more experience in the Palutena matchup. Again, I do think the Fox could be a serious candidate here, because Skyjay doesn't have nearly as much experience versus Fox as he does versus Palutena, as well as Light beating him pretty dominantly at main stage. Now again, Light is still Light, but Luis is that caliber player with that Fox that he can pull off those same wins. So who is actually going to win this thing? Well, in my very humble opinion, I have Luis. Of course, you gotta have the GOAT. He is going to win. Louis Money undeniably takes this one and gets in the summit. He should have gotten in at 4. He's getting in this time, and I thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'm curious you guys thinking. Again, I do think on paper it is probably Skyjay to be the favorite, but Luis, he just has that dog in him. I really believe he is that kind of player. Really excited to see this matchup again. It's super hype. Unfortunate that everyone that is at a summit LCQ couldn't be compensated. I know Songs was pretty upset about it, but it is really just a situation of circumstance. It's unfortunate Light had to drop out. It was fortunate that Luis and Skyjay were in the area. It's going to be a hype match tomorrow, regardless of who wins. And again, thank you guys for watching. Sport's been absolutely unreal lately, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.